people are expecting us. They're already waiting for us.
They run very high risk during the pandemic because they live close together. They are overcrowded. I feel like we can serve them better. We cannot really put an health center from the government. For now, we do outreach services, and that is giving them a sort of hope. What I'm most proud of is when you get to the communities and see the welcome the community members give you, and you see your staff, they are doing it willingly. I feel happy.
This is what we do regularly in this community, to bring health services to their doorstep. It's been a long journey, but we are arrived here.
We conducted a lot of community mobilization. Our coverage moved from below 60 to 90%. The Orange Knowledge Program is a program that really we rely on in you.
Good morning, good afternoon to some of you. A warm welcome to the Leaving No One Behind webinar. This forms part of the broader inclusive development agenda, and it is a thematic focus within the Global Development Unit at NAFIC. My name is Itumeleng Dlamini, and I'm the Orange Knowledge Program Country Manager for South Africa and Tanzania. In this 6th OKP Partner Day session, we aim to discuss the role of capacity building programs in advancing and addressing inclusion in education. Glad you could join us today. To ensure a smooth session with many participants, we have a few set house rules that we would like you to kindly abide by. So please make sure that your mic has been muted. Please use the chat box if you have a question. The entire session will be recorded for future viewing. So if you do not want to appear on the screen and you don't want to be on the video, please make sure that when you pose a question or you have a comment that you turn off your video or that you leave the meeting. If your connection is lagging, please turn off your video. When asking questions, please stay on topic. If you have a specific question on the Orange Knowledge Program, let us know through okp@nafic.nl or your regular contact. When sharing your social media, please use NAFIC @NAFIC Twitter is @NAFIC Global Development, and LinkedIn is #NAFIC or #NAFIC Partner. Although this is being delivered online, the OKP Partner Days are very special and they're crucial and important during these challenging times where cooperation is important, because we can do so much more together as a collective. And this reminds me of the African proverb that if you want to go fast, you have to go at it alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together. And this is why these sessions are important, because as a collective, we can truly create the change that is required. At NAFIC, we value exchanging thoughts and ideas, and we value sharing experiences with our partners and amongst partners. As such, we hope that you will find this session informative, but most importantly, that you will apply the learnings. I am joining this session from sunny Johannesburg, South Africa. If you can please use the poll in front of your screen to share your location. Where are you joining us from today? Great. Wow, that's interesting. So 96% of you are joining from Europe. Well, I haven't voted, so I suppose Africa is not represented there. And then no one from South America. But regardless, welcome and thank you for joining us. In the next slide, if you can give us a sense of which sector you represent. Okay, great, great. So there is a big representation from the university, academia, and then we have a few from public sector, and then a large contingent from the nonprofit sector. Well, it's great to see all of you, and I hope you will enjoy the session. So I'd now like to hand over to Lindy Van Vliet. She will be moderating today's session. Lindy is the head of knowledge at KIT Royal Tropical Institute. She also serves as the coordinator for the Dutch SDG 3 Alliance in the Netherlands. She has more than 20 years of experience in international development and global health. And prior to joining KIT, she served in a variety of positions at Oxfam and worked in Nicaragua as a trainer and consultant on organizational program development. So, Lindy, I'm going to hand over to you, and I wish you all a fruitful session.
Thank you so much, Itumeling. I hope everybody can hear me, but and welcome also on my behalf. And it's great to be here and to be the host for this session, a very important session on inclusion and very close to my heart. I think there was a last question still that we were expected to call, but I think due to some time constraints, we started 5 minutes late, so we have to catch up a bit. We skipped that one, but it was about your expectations. And I do hope that this session will meet your expectations. And I do my best to make up for that. I think some of the clear expectations that were communicated before is that it's a session of learning, exchange, but also thinking in new solutions and innovative solutions. And for that, we need active participations, because action is definitely what we need on the SDGs. And today's session, and particularly with this audience, I think it's very important to discuss inequality and leaving no one behind, and which is, of course, the central theme of the SDG agenda, which you see here in represented with all the 17 goals. Inequality is, of course, already for years on the rise, both socioeconomic inequality, but also other forms of inequality on gender, ethnicity, or any other identity issue or social status situation. And I think this has been shared a lot in recent debate, but could deserve much more attention. And I think next to that, the fact that inequality is on the rise between countries, within countries, in countries, between regions, and in regions and communities, between different groups of people, we need urgent action. And education has always been a powerful tool for transformation and for actually balancing out existing inequality issues in communities. There's ample evidence how education can be transformative in raising people's income, people's social status, declining gaps between men and women, if only all people would have access to quality education for as long as possible. So, but if I also see the GEM report, which will be presented today also, the progress we've been making in education is stagnating. So with stagnating progress on education, higher levels of inequality, the transformative power of education is declining. So action is urgently needed from all of us. So next to this broader overview in this session, which will be provided by the next speaker, you will also get some very concrete we will share some very concrete experiences from some projects where solutions to really reach those who are lagging behind most are being shared. And I truly hope that these examples will inspire us all to connect and to take action for the future and to learn from these examples. So, because that's in the end where the SDGs are all about. SDG 17 is about partnership, and we have to work more together to really ensure that no one is left behind and we reach all our goals by 2030. So, without taking more time, I think I hope the atmosphere is set, that we are all in an active mode. We have a crowd of almost 40 participants, and that's a good crowd for active participation. You don't have to be silent. The presenters will all get some 10 minutes to present, but after each session, there will be room to participate and share your thoughts and reflections. So please, on my invitation, do not be shy. Share your comments either in the chat or take the floor by raising your hand or voice, or by raising your hand, and you will be unmuted. So thank you so much. And with that, I would like to introduce the first speaker, which is Mr. Manos Antonis. He is the director of the reporting team at UNESCO, who every year who brings out the global education monitoring report, the GEM report, a resource for all of us working on education and other SDGs. So he has a long, he joined the team in 2011, and before that worked at OPM as a development policy consultant. And he, in that capacity, has monitored and evaluated various education sector projects in different contexts, from Bangladesh to Nigeria. So with that wealth of both practical and project experiences, and now the more global view, I'm very proud to give Mr. Antonis the floor to give us the bigger picture. Thank you so much. Mr. Manos, over to you.
Thank you, Lindy. Thank you. It was wonderful to hear these words about education from a health expert. It's really very much appreciated. And it was also great to be taken with a video earlier back to Lagos at the time when actually this is no longer possible. Just a very quick word. Thank you, first of all, very much for the invitation. Thank you also to Brigitte. I see she's online. I know she tried in the past to get in touch and invite us to speak to NAFIC events. It's an honor, and thank you very much for the opportunity. In 2 words, the Global Education Monitoring Report is the tool of the international community to monitor progress on education. The report started in 2002, and we are an editorially independent report hosted and published by UNESCO. And as I keep reminding people when I do present in the Netherlands, it is actually thanks to a very generous Dutch grant about 10 years ago that the report managed to survive over the long period of years and become a sustainable project that today enjoys respect and appreciation from all over the world. The report every year tackles 2 parts, two issues related to its mandate. The first is monitoring the targets in SDG 4, the global goal on education. But there's also a theme where we're supposed to monitor progress on one of the core topics related to SDG 4 and monitor the implementation of national and international strategies to achieve SDG 4. And for 2020, and I'm going to share my presentation now, the theme was inclusion in education. And actually, it's a fair question. What did people have in mind when they signed up to this ambitious goal? The report started thinking from the premise that actually people and countries were not fully aware of what they were signing up to, even as recently as 2015. In the report, we referred to inclusion as a process that embraces diversity and builds a sense of belonging to achieve social cohesion. These actions that can achieve inclusion are rooted in the belief that every person has value and potential. Nobody should be discriminated or rejected. No learner should adapt to the education system. The education system should adapt to the needs of the learners. Now we know that the case for inclusion was actually championed by those supporting the rights of people with disabilities, who ensured in 2006 with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that the right to inclusive education became enshrined in international law. But inclusion, and that's a core message of my presentation and this report, is not about just one group, because the mindsets and the mechanisms that generate discrimination and rejection are the same for all those excluded. This was also the conclusion of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, who issued just in 2016, just 4 years ago, its general comment number 4, interpreting the right to inclusive education. And there has been a very intense debate about that. So as you saw from this introductory slide, we really talk about a very large, about anybody who's really at risk of being excluded. At the end of the day, anyone can under certain circumstances. Every society needs to own up to its mechanisms that exclude and do something about it. Identity, background, and ability, unfortunately, still dictate education opportunities. A discussion of inclusion has to start from the fact that even before the pandemic, 258 million children, adolescents, and young people were out of school. In 12 countries, we have the best quality recent data, children with disabilities are 2.5 times more likely never to go to school than their peers, the worst possible form of exclusion that we know. Adolescent refugees are 3 times more likely to be out of secondary school. The world set a target for all to complete secondary school by 2030, but in at least 20 countries, not a single poor rural young woman was completing secondary school. Among those who complete lower secondary school, the richest students are twice as likely to learn basic skills than the poorest. So it's also what happens in the classroom. Stigma, stereotypes, and discrimination mean that millions of learners are alienated inside classrooms and less likely to progress through education. LGBTI students in the United States are 3 times more likely to stay home from school because they feel unsafe. And grade 4 students who not learn in their home language are 34% less likely to learn basic reading skills. So this is a key message to say that inclusion really is about everyone. The report makes 10 recommendations, and I'm going to take you swiftly through them. But the first one is the one that perhaps I hope stays with you most, because it's the overarching recommendation of the report. Inclusion cannot be achieved if it is seen as an inconvenience or if people harbor the belief that children's capacity to learn is fixed. So the report calls on all countries to widen the understanding of inclusive education to encompass all learners, regardless of identity, background, or ability. So if you open the report, you'll see examples from all over the world. The albinos in sub-Saharan Africa, the stateless in Arab countries, the Roma in Europe, the displaced Rohingya in Asia, the Afro-descendants in Latin America. Yet many governments do not base their laws and policies on this principle. The report found that 68% of countries have a definition of inclusive education, but only 57% cover multiple marginalized groups. In a quarter of countries, the definition of inclusive education only covers people with disabilities or special needs. And interventions should be coherent from early childhood to adulthood in order for inclusion to be achieved. Inclusion is not costly by definition. Simple gestures and ways to manage a classroom cost nothing and are the most valuable contributions to inclusion. Still, efforts need to be made to make sure that we get equity and inclusion right through our financing mechanisms. There are 2 parts to this story. First, education ministries need to allocate general funding not equally to all schools and regions, but according to their needs. And secondly, education ministries need to think not only about their own budget, but also how budgets from other parts of government can contribute. Since the 1990s, education attainment increased by up to 1.5 years through cash transfer programs in Latin America. There's also one other dimension of financing inclusive education. The overall objective, let's not forget, is to ensure that all children attend their local school and receive the support they need there. But laws in 25% of countries still call for students with disabilities to be educated in separate settings. So moving from where we're now to having systems that cater for every learner's needs, including those with severe disabilities, is not easy. But in many ways, it is a planning and management challenge. A legacy of segregating children means that human and material resources to support diversity are also not everywhere, but concentrated in a few places and unequally distributed. So we need mechanisms and incentives to share these specialist resources and ensure that such expertise supports all mainstream schools. Parents and communities should also believe that inclusion is possible and desirable. Unfortunately, many parents around the world feel that children with disabilities disrupt other children's learning. Many parents prefer the familiarity or exclusivity that some schools are offering, locking themselves out in particular schools that serve their income group, their ethnic group, their religious group. That should not be happening. Parents of vulnerable children may also have genuine fears that their children are not served well in mainstream schools. A study in Australia showed that 37% of students with intellectual disabilities in special schools had previously been in mainstream schools, but conditions there were not sufficiently supportive, so they had to go. So parents and communities should be able to voice their concerns and be invited to the design of policies on inclusion in education, which need to be bottom-up. Partnership is a key word for government efforts to promote inclusion. First, education ministries need to work with other ministries to share data on disadvantaged children to integrate services. In Colombia, social programs are tied to a multidimensional poverty index that takes into account their poverty, whether they're internally displaced, whether they belong to an indigenous group. Secondly, education ministries need to ensure that when local governments have a mandate to provide services for inclusion, that they are fully funded and the capacities of local officials are developed. NGOs play key roles in making the case for inclusion in societies. First, many NGOs are advocates and watchdogs for the right to inclusive education, monitoring government commitments and providing valuable information to hold them to account. Secondly, these organizations also provide education services, whether on government contracts or on their own initiative. So it is very important for governments to ensure that NGO provision of education leads to inclusion, meets standards, and is aligned with social policy, with national policy. In the best of cases, as in Armenia, NGOs actually campaigned and succeeded in ensuring that the government adopted the inclusive education paradigm. The powerful concept of universal design is mentioned often in inclusive education. It is first of all about making school environments and learning environments flexible to ensure that every child can benefit. But this idea of flexibility can also be applied more widely. First of all students should learn from the same flexible, relevant, and accessible curricula. Yet many countries modify curricula to exclude. And textbooks, as well as curricula, need to not exclude by perpetuating stereotypes through omission or misrepresentation. In Europe, 23 in 49 countries did not address sexual orientation and gender identity expression in the curriculum. Only 24% of text and images in secondary school textbooks were of women in the Punjab province of Pakistan. We know that these are not issues that are easy to tackle in most countries. There are political challenges regarding the kind of society people aspire to achieve through education and through inclusion. Assessment should also be there to help students demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways and not to punish them. Of course, for all that to happen, we need teachers who are ready to teach all students. Around a quarter of teachers in middle and high income countries reported a high need for professional development on teaching students with special needs. but teachers should not be taught inclusive approaches as a specialist topic. Head teachers should communicate an inclusive school ethos, and the teaching body should also reflect social diversity. What data are collected and how they're used determines to a large extent whether inclusion is served. Identifying groups makes those who are disadvantaged visible, helps to prompt action, but doing so can also reduce children to labels, which can be self-fulfilling and harm them. Portugal is an example of a country that has a non-categorical approach to determine special needs. At the same time, we need censuses and surveys to collect the types of information that will really help make the disadvantaged groups' situation visible. Recognizing that formulating questions on nationality, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation can touch on sensitive personal information, be intrusive, and trigger persecution fears, we should also acknowledge that progress has been made. In Kenya, for example, new ethnic group categories have been added in the census. Measurement of disability has improved through the Washington Group set of questions that help standardize how we understand disability to be consistent with the so-called social model. But still, discrepancies remain. 41% of countries have not had a publicly available survey that can allow us to disaggregate data on education since 2015. And some countries only collect very basic or even no data on disability, whereas others go to the extent of monitoring student experiences, whether they feel they belong in school and whether they feel they're cared for. The last recommendation is about learning from peers. Inclusion, as I said before, is first and foremost a process. Everyone can learn from each other because there's not a single way to achieve inclusion. It's a process that we can help define together. What the report did this year was to add 2 new websites, and I would like to draw your attention in case you can use them for your own benefits. For a long time, we have had WIDE, our online database on inequality, but we have now added 2 new sites. One is called Peer, and the other one is called Scope, and I'll say in a minute what they mean. Peer is a site where you can locate information on your country, a description of laws and policies that reflect what the countries are doing, in this case, on inclusion in education. Although this is a resource that we will be building upon with more information on equitable financing, on regulating private education, on gender equality, etc. When we launched it, we had the profiles for more than 160 countries, and it is a resource that complements the 2020 report, which can only refer to a small number of examples. We aim it to support policy dialogue and help countries at the sub-regional or regional level to exchange experiences about how they approach inclusion in education. The second site, given that I don't have time to go through all the information that the report has on progress towards the SDG 4 targets, is called Scope. It's the complement, the online complement to the monitoring part of the report, where you can go through 5 stories, 5 narratives on access, equity, learning, quality, and finance, and compare countries on some of the key indicators of the SDG 4 monitoring framework. So this is open to you. Please do go to education-progress.org for any comparison that might be of interest and for which you might be curious. I'm closing with making bridge to the next 2 presentations. First of all, we're going to listen about comprehensive sexuality education. Every year, the Global Monitoring Report also has a complement, a special edition on gender. Our gender report was published in September. And in one of those areas, one of those topics that we covered, we mentioned the issue of early pregnancy, early marriage. We had 3 case studies from 3 different countries in the world, Argentina, Sierra Leone, and the United Kingdom, where we reviewed policies, and we concluded that comprehensive sexuality education is key for supporting inclusion, because in so many countries in the world, young mothers and young pregnant girls are actually excluded from school. And that's a big problem. In Africa, 25% of women give birth before the age of 18, and still there are countries, 2 in particular, that actively ban pregnant girls from going to school. Comprehensive sexuality education can help confront prejudices and condone and stop condoning child marriage and stop tolerating violence. But we need to overcome two challenges, and I'm sure that we're going to hear more about that: how to address erroneous beliefs about what should or should not be taught in school, and secondly, how to manage such a complex reform of introducing comprehensive sexuality education that needs to balance financing, teacher education, curriculum content, and complex monitoring requirements to see if we're doing what we're stating in policy. Finally, you're also going to hear about tertiary education. The report covers different aspects of education, different levels of education. In the case of tertiary education, we have two important dimensions. There is a horizontal equity: who enters university and who graduates. That's a very different story. But also what institutions do different students with different backgrounds attend. We notice that it is very important to combine financial aid with other measures to overcome non-financial barriers to entering and completing university, related to regulations, funding formulas, or grants that make universities, force universities to be more proactive in admitting students from groups at risk. Unfortunately, only 11% of 71 countries that have been reviewed had a comprehensive equity strategy. Another 11% only had a policy on one particular group, but that, of course, is not enough. And last but not least, 30% of scholarships, or just 30% of scholarships to African students, were classified as inclusive. They offered full funding and met at least one developmental objective for these students. That means that a lot of work needs to happen to make scholarship programs more inclusive. Concluding, thank you very much for your attention, again, for your invitation. You can download the report and a number of resources that are made available, including the summary in 30 languages. Just to alert you that we also have regional editions of the report as of this year. We launched the first one on Latin America and the Caribbean in November, and we will be launching a second one at the early next year on Central and Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. Thank you very much, and I pass back the screen to you.
Thank you so much, Manos, for this excellent presentation, which gives a great overview of the 10 recommendations from the GEM report, detailing everyone very specific with nice concrete examples. Thank you so much. We will talk a bit later about these recommendations and ask your opinion about it of the audience. But first, maybe to you, Manos, a quick clarifying question that came up in the chat during your presentation, which came from Jan and was echoed by some others. Where specifically the question was raised whether full integration of, for example, people with disabilities in the regular system is always the way to go, or whether sometimes special needs are so specific that you need more targeted strategies and maybe more special environments for people. So could you say something about this, maybe?
Of course, this is a very, very long debate that has been going on for a very long time. The report notes that the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has been increasingly and very clearly taking the stance that everyone should be taught together. I would say inclusion, and that's why I repeated that, mentioned that in the beginning, is a process. It doesn't necessarily always define the outcome that we want. That outcome is defined as we go. What is most important is to start from the premise that it is desirable to teach all children together, to make sure that they're all part of the same community, and to not have preconceptions and prejudices about what every child can learn. Yes, it is true that a lot of conditions need to be met for that to be possible. But the important thing is the starting point, is the principle, is where we start. I think where the world has got it wrong in the past is to take an assumption ex ante that actually these children should not be with us and we should not do anything about that. I think it's a matter of attitudes, a matter of belief, it's a matter of principles and values about where our society should be moving towards, and that the other solutions will be found along the way, and every country will find its own way to achieve that. We know for sure that countries differ dramatically in the extent to which they identify special needs and the extent to which they allow children with disabilities, even severe disabilities, in the classroom together with everyone else. There definitely are a lot of different experiences to draw upon, and definitely not, it's not even a rich versus poor country debates. Different countries actually achieve very different results, and it's surprisingly how in the heart of Europe you can find very exclusionary systems that actually are widely condemned even by the courts, the European Court of Human Rights. Therefore, this is a debate that refers to everyone, every country, every society.
Thank you so much for clarifying that position. And indeed, learning from all these different contexts, I think, was your last point, and that's also what we're doing here. But without wanting to steer the poll, I would like to ask all participants to maybe to give their opinion on of these recommendations that you just heard, and they are summarized here and on the next slide, and you will also see them in the poll. So reaching from policy, financing, to teachers, to communities, what do you think is the most prioritized action in your context that you would want to advocate for and you would like to take up? So the poll will be launched, and please give your opinion. Now, I realize there's quite some information. Take some time. Is it about refinancing? Is it about communities changing beliefs? Is it about more consistency in policy and within governments, different departments working together and collaborating with NGOs? And it goes even beyond, or is it about applying one universal design? Is it about investing more in the workforce, the teachers? Data is an important entry point. Sharing more lessons learned. We are having now 19 people responding. This is to warm you up, eh? Okay.
They're all relevant.
They're all relevant indeed, Manos. And I was thinking when we did this, you will hate this because you probably say all these 10 go in combination. It's an integrated approach and we should do everything. But we wanted to test the waters and let people reflect a bit.
Yeah, that's very good. And of course, we're doing the last one, which is we're learning from each other, right?
Exactly, exactly. That was nice that you ended with that one. Okay, I suggest we close the poll because I don't see a lot of extra voting there. And indeed, I think your point that you made, Manos, by actually really taking a very broad understanding of inclusivity in education and taking that broad perspective and also the interconnections, the intersectionality between identity, ability, and socioeconomic status, I think that's very important. And that definitely got the most votes. So that broader concept is broadly supported by the group. And on the second place, I think indeed resources and expertise are mentioned as an important next step, which is not strange with a community that all is actually trying to strengthen these resources. Okay, I think with this, we move to the next presentation. So maybe we could, I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is Mrs. Pam Baatse. She works at KIT, so she is well known to me. As a senior advisor on sexual and reproductive health and rights and AIDS. And for a long time, she brings a lot of experience, more than 25 years, in managing and evaluating large-scale complex health programs with, in many cases, components of comprehensive sexuality education involved. And she will be sharing some experiences in Bangladesh on a project that we have implemented there. So for you, over to you, Pam. And thank you, Manos, already for making the bridge to comprehensive sexuality as education as key part of professional education. The floor is yours, Pam. Maybe you should put it in presenting mode.
Yeah, that takes a bit of time. So it's working. I just to thanks for the introduction, Lindy. Just to let you know that this presentation is together with Antoinette from Nikatan, who's heading Nikatan, an organization working on people with disability, young people with disability in Bangladesh. So I will do the presentation jointly. The presentation is about a program which is called the We Care program, and that has, of course, multiple meanings. And we care about sexual reproductive health, but also it is about strengthening the sexual reproductive health competencies of healthcare workers, providing on-the-ground services to people at union and ward level in Bangladesh. And we want to strengthen their competencies by integrating evidence-informed, rights-based and gender transformative sexual reproductive health and rights approaches in their curricula, but also that of their supervisors. What is the background to We Care? Bangladesh has and it's an Orange Knowledge program funded program, which started in 2019 and runs up the end of 2021. The background to We Care, why it was designed, is that Bangladesh has a very young population. 1/3 is between the 10 to 24 years of age range. We see a lot of adolescents facing teenage pregnancies, also linked to the child marriage issue that Manos was just talking about, and also contributing substantially, exponentially to maternal mortality. We also see that there's really an unequal access to health services, especially when it comes to women of the lowest wealth quintile, those who are poorest. They use much less the assistance of a skilled birth attendant when comparing with those with more economic resources. So, and then we do see that there's also quite a level of disability in Bangladesh, with 6% of the children and 40% of the adults. And then it's also recognized in Bangladesh that it's very important to provide services to these young people, to people with disabilities, to people who have less resources, but that you need also technical capacities to provide services to these groups, and including also indigenous groups. And these capacities are not strong enough to provide these services. And as this, at the same time, as Manos was also saying, it's also very important that the sexual reproductive health and rights information that is also being used in schools is improved. And one of these cadres, the SACMOS, is also providing services or in school additional information to young people. So this whole project is really geared towards changing this, improving the situation. So what we try to achieve with the We Care program is that to equip these providers working at the union levels in communities and in schools and in the health centers, but also their supervisors with the ability, the attitudes and the motivation to provide inclusive sexual reproductive health services and information. And we know that it's extremely important to also include the supervisors, because if you only train the service providers, but their supervisors are not able to support them and to deal with more complex issues, there's less opportunity for success. And we do this together with NIPORT, which is the organization of the government responsible for training the cadres that we focus on, and also the Director General Family Planning that is also responsible for these cadres. And then we have Red Orange Rutgers, Nikatan, and kids working on this. What we need to realize, it's a very ambitious project. The NIPORT has 33 institutes, tertiary training institutes, vocational training institutes for these people working at union level to train. So we are working with them, and we have the ambition to also look at gender, human rights, and evidence-informed approaches. Then improve the supervision and support. And there's quite a number of family welfare visitors working at union level. That's 4,400. There's 2,500 SACMOs and 4,400 family planning inspectors and 23,000 family welfare assistants. So it's really reaching out to a large group. And then also working with these institutes so that they are able to use more evidence-informed approaches. And by doing this, we as country A partners also learn from the country B partners. So that's the fourth outcome. We have really the key elements that we use is the integration of evidence-informed. So we really look at what evidence is in place, what rights-based information, so that speaks to that inclusiveness, disability-friendly and gender transformative approaches can we include in the curricula and the core curricula, and also for the supervisors, where there are no real training curricula as of yet to really strengthen their supervisory skills. And then within these curricula, we focus on looking at professional knowledge, attitudes and skills to how to make this more inclusive. And then of the supervision, improved supervision, as I already mentioned, and then the knowledge exchange. What we thought of at the onset of the project, how we could pursue inclusiveness, because it's easier to speak about inclusiveness, but how do you do it? How do you integrate it? Is that by involving the groups, the youth, the people with disabilities, and the indigenous groups in the curriculum development process. So including them in the needs assessment, but also making them part of the curriculum development process and the co-piloting, so that their needs are being taken on board, but also that the service providers become more comfortable and more knowledgeable and more people-centered in working with these groups. Also in the curriculum, the challenges faced by these groups are being included in case studies, are central in the role plays, and also in field visits. So really to increase the focus and understanding. And from other pieces of research, we know that when you build bridges and between people who don't know each other well, you can really improve also the service provider client relationship. So by bringing more understanding of the service providers about these groups can really help improve the quality of care. And not only for these groups, but also for providing services in general, if these service providers also start to work on a more client-centered approach. Furthermore, the third way of trying to pursue inclusiveness is by also looking at the policies of these training institutes and to see whether there can be a bigger space for these vulnerable groups. So by involving them as resource persons, also in the trainings themselves, when the curricula being rolled out, but also looking at, is there an option to have people with disability be part of the staff, or have people from indigenous groups be part of the staff, or have young people be more part of the staff? And and at organizational level, then to try to see that NIPORT as training center could include master trainers from these groups. there are two challenges I will address, and then I will give the floor to Antoinette. The project has been quite affected by COVID, of course, and that's especially because you would be able in many settings to go online and do online activities. But with an institute as NIPORT, a government institute, if they have not been given the directive of the ministry to go online and to work online. So there's some bureaucratic obstacles for that. Which has made the whole project go slower. At the same time, the advantage has been that we as country A partners have been able to much more analyze the current curricula in place and looked at the things then that can really be improved in the curricula. We do see that in terms of the formulation of learning objectives, in terms of linking activities to achieving learning objectives, that has not really been gelled, and especially looking more at a competency focused curriculum, because the current curriculum is very knowledge based. So we do see that it has given us extra time to look at that. And we also realized that I want to quote Ita Meleng, because she was saying that if we want to go far, we have to go at it together. So it's very important to work with these government institutions, because if we are able to incorporate it in these training curricula, you could see that there's quite massive numbers being trained and also working in these positions. So then you can have a much more sustainable approach to it. Antoinette, can I give the floor to you?
Yeah, thank you, Pam. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of people with disabilities. So for a sexual development, it's essential that youngsters develop a positive self-image and are satisfied with their own body. Not all youngsters with a disability have sufficient knowledge about the functions of their own body, and many suffer from a negative body image. In a training to disabled girls, I found that they didn't want to look in a mirror because their family members and neighbors always tell them that they are ugly because of their disability. In a recent study from the Breck University, it was found that only 30% out of the 5,000 persons with a disability had some kind of knowledge on SRHR. They gained their knowledge mainly from family and friends, and only about 15% from health workers. And what if those youngsters interpret the information wrongly? What if they miss the nuances? Or if the information is based on myths instead of facts? I know from my own experience that the parents lack knowledge on this issue and that what they know is based on myths. So for youngsters with an intellectual disability, it's important that they get positive, explicit information. For example, telling youngsters in a negative way that masturbation is not allowed in public might be problematic for youngsters with severe intellectual disabilities. They might not understand the word not. They might understand masturbation is allowed in public. It is better to tell them that what they should do, for example, that they can masturbate in the bathroom or bedroom. You always have to take in consideration the emotional development and capacity to cope with the given information. A discrepancy can often be seen between these levels. In the study from Brock shows that the attitude of health workers towards youngsters with a disability is disrespectful. They often do not show any empathy and do not talk directly with them, but about them with the caretaker. So I want to show a short video of a girl with cerebral palsy who would like to share her learnings after receiving an SRHR training. So can you please start the video?
আমি প্রতিবন্ধী শিশু আমার বয়স 13 বছর আমি মনে করতাম মাসিক এটা লোক মেয়েগো হয় আবার ছেলেগো হয় কিছুদিন পর আমি জানি এটা হওয়া ভালো ছেলেগো হয় না একদিন এক বয়স্ক মানুষ আমার সাথে খুব খারাপ কাজ করে এমন বলে এটা কের খুব ভালো কের কাছে কইও না 3 দিন পর আমি জানি এটা হওয়া খারাপ ভালো না আমি এখন ভয় পাই না এখন লজ্জা পাই না এখন আমি মাকে সব কথাই বলি
But this video clearly shows that how important it is to provide training to youngsters with a disability. They will not gain only knowledge, but also a better self-image and self-esteem. So the opportunities for this project are that we can make use of the outcomes of the RUC studies on disability and sexuality, and that we can use the experience from Nikitan and the trainers who have experience with training youngsters with complex needs. But above all, we can learn from the youngsters with disability. We have to start to listen to them and to talk with them and not only about them. So, well, I think that were the opportunities. I give the word back to Pam.
Thanks. That was it. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pam and Antoinette, for this excellent presentation. And I think indeed, next to the very sustainable entry point by going through the educational institutes, the impact that this could have, this program, on the lives of girls like I don't know actually what her name was, but that's terrible. But who was shown in the video is very evident. So thank you so much for presenting. And yeah, I would like to ask the audience. You have warmed up now by first sharing your thoughts in polls, but now maybe if there are any questions from the audience for clarification on this presentation or for more general comments. And I think it's interesting because a question in the chat was posed by Han Aert on what are the obstacles to tertiary education, and professional education, of course, is part of tertiary education. So I don't know, Pam, in the specific context of Bangladesh, what have you noticed so far on some of the major obstacles? And you have already shared a bit how you are trying to overcome these obstacles, but could you share a bit more?
Yeah, it's really the current process, and it's I've already talked about the lack of competency-based education, and the strong focus on knowledge provision, where you still have the idea that the experts know it all and they talk down on people. And that is a big challenge to change that in the curricula. And we try to incorporate this in the curricula for the family welfare visitors and for the family welfare assistants and for the SACMOs. But the rest of the curricula is not changed, and it's also a kind of a norm setting. And breaking through this is a huge challenge. But the idea is that if people learn to talk to also these groups that are more left behind, it will also do good to the overall service provision, because everyone needs this. Everyone needs that people are not talked down to, but that they are talked with. Whether you are a person with a disability, whether you're a youth, whether you are have less economic resources, because that can only improve the quality of services. But you need to have then the trainers need to be brought on board, and you need to train. And of course, these when you train people, then they are being absorbed in a system that is not used to this. So it's not something that you can realize very quickly. You have to be very patient to achieve this and to make this change. But that's why we also have this role of the supervisors, because if the supervisors can also support this more, then we can make a bigger change. Antoinette, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I have nothing to add, no.
No, thank you. That's very clear. I mean, and hopeful too that these participatory approaches, could hopefully inspire the workforce on SRHR and also the supervisors and all the people you were targeting to really see this as an overall quality improvement, and not as just ticking a box. And in that sense, be a start of some more fundamental change in perceptions on inclusivity and education, like Manos was also advocating for, that should all start with that. And the group actually recognized that here in today's session. Thank you so much for this presentation. Also due in light of time, I would like to move to the last presentation of this session, which is done by Ms. Elisa Matola. She is Deputy Director of the Instituto Superior Politécnico de Manica in Mozambique. Apologies, my Portuguese pronunciation is not optimal, but most and foremost, she's the founder of the gender unit at that same institute and has been a gender specialist for quite some years. Oh, maybe still on mute a little, or for quite some years advising NGOs, civil society and government on the inclusion of gender-specific strategies in their programs. So with that, she will present on the Girls Support Project, a project to actually enable young girls to complete primary school education in Mozambique. The floor is yours, Elisa.
Okay, good afternoon. Hello.
Good afternoon, yes.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the invitation and also for the opportunity to share Mozambique experience. I'm going to present a small project that we developed with girls in a district called Vanduzi in Mozambique. Our institution is a higher polytechnical institution, which is located in a rural area, a very poor rural area, and with no conditions. That's why we decided to do this kind of activities to help young girls, at least for them to have a bit of knowledge and participate on decision making on what they want to do with their life. This is the structure of my presentation. I'm going to talk first, what is this gender unit? And then I'm going to go through the project, what is the project about, and what were the main challenges, particularly for this project, but also there are challenges that we have when we are doing the other different projects within the unit. So our gender unit started in 2013 through a project funded by NAFIC, which was a project Niche 151. It was a project developed to enhance the capacity of the institution. And when we were implementing the project, we found the need to introduce the gender issues because we were having problems in getting more girls doing the courses, because in this institution, the courses are mainly related to agriculture and engineering, and they consider, normally here in Mozambique in particular, this kind of courses are considered to be courses that are more for men than to women. That's why we decided to introduce the gender issues in this project. So we are 5 members in the unit, but whenever we have a different activities, we also call experts from different areas so that they can help us put in place a specific project. Um, in terms of our purpose, we have 3 areas. The first one is at the institutional level. We work to ensure gender-sensitive program and governance, and also work to increase women representation in decision-making positions, not only within the institution, but also with other institutions and training schools, for example. We work a lot with programs to help improve girls' access and retention in school. We work a lot and we train teachers and members of the board of schools to know how to use the affirmative actions, especially when there are institutions that receive more girls from rural areas, so that they can easily select them in order for them to create to continue with the study. We also help to create safe environments for minority and disadvantaged groups. In terms of a safe environment, talking about in some cases we have to do something in terms of the infrastructures, and also in terms of uh, helping them with materials that can help spread the information on what is good and what's bad in terms of sexual health, knowing their rights, and what are the different opportunities for girls and boys. In terms of course contents, research and extension in our institution through our gender unit, we also work in order to develop course contents that are gender sensitive, also materials, and we also design and promote gender sensitive research and extension agendas across ISPM, and also we work a lot with research and development impact, especially in agriculture areas, which is the area that we work more and is the main activity of the institution. In terms of our connection with the local institution and the
Elisa, you're breaking up. Maybe you can turn off the camera because we've lost you.
communities, we work and also improve activities and partnership
Elisa,
to easily
maybe you can turn off the camera.
girls.
Yeah, maybe it's a good idea to turn off
Sorry?
the camera because we're losing
Hello?
you sometimes.
Yeah.
You're breaking up a bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. Let's continue to try. It's okay.
Okay. Can I? Hello?
Yes, you are well heard again. Yes.
Hello? Is it? Okay, thank you. I think we can continue.
Yes, please. Please continue. Yeah.
Okay. So how do we work? Institutionally, we have monthly meetings, and the unit has an independent budget, but this budget is deduced from the board annual budget. It's not a significant amount, but we manage to use it for the different activities. But the other percentage of the unit budget is from external activities, and it comes from the niche projects funded by NAFIC. We also link with outside through research and development and extension projects. And we have a lot of projects, especially within the niche projects. And we work with Eco Africa, Agra, Fazimo, and we provide them with technical support in implementing how to evaluate if women are being integrated in the different activities. In terms of the project itself, the project is mainly about supporting girls in finishing the primary school. In this school in particular, that is in the institution surroundings within the community. So the gender unit does not limit its activities at the institutional level, but also focuses on improving the girls' life in the neighboring communities. As I said, it is in this context that we think that it was important for us to share this experience, because we are talking about a very poor community, which is called Nyademba. And the institution is a very big institution with almost 2,000 students, but it's within a rural area. So there is a big problem in terms of cultural barriers that we have with this community. So what we are doing is try to bring these girls and these boys to be training in the institution, that so that the community can also um, grow faster. So as I was saying, Yademba, which is this community, is a neighborhood in the locality of Shiremera. It's on the base of the sale of small agricultural supplies that this population gets money for basic needs and sends children to school. The young people of this locality, mostly without schooling, depend on the seasonal jobs that we offer, and they use this money to raise their families and also for fun in the case of the youth that live there. Due to economic needs, low level of education in the community, and the prevalence of premature wedding marriages, that is very common, many families prefer to invest in the education of boys, even though the statistics show that there are more girls in these communities than boys. But in terms of cultural ways of thinking, the parents prefer to send the boys rather than sending also the girls to school. So, for example, in this project, we found as a problem that in 2019, this school enrolled 174 students, in which 82 were boys and 92 were girls. The number of girls tend to decrease as the level of the grades increase, and the families only give preference to young teenagers, in this case the boys, because girls help families for domestic chores, farming, and others has income to guarantee the payment of dowry at the wedding. Although in the act of the enrollment in 2009, for example, there is a great number of girls that the data shows in 2018 that didn't finish the primary education, because all this was related to these premature weddings, because it's part of their culture. So most of these girls, they don't study because the parents think that it's better for them to get married, because they are going to help the families to have more money rather than studying. So the main objective of our project was to contribute to the reduction of inequalities and promote gender equity and equality in this school. and consequently pass this information to the community. We believe that the dedication and attendance of the girl at school until the end of the training cycle, it would help her to serve as an example for more girls, and also would help the parents to send their also other girls, and also would help this girl to participate in the decision making about their own future.
Yes,
I think we
Elisa,
can
you still
continue.
there?
Yeah, we can continue.
Yes.
Yes, we can
Yes.
continue.
Could
Yeah.
you move to the most important lessons learned from the project in light of time? Oh, here you are. Achievements. Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
And why
Yes.
not in 1 or 2 minutes?
Okay. In terms of achievement, we managed to reconstruct the whole school because it was not safe for the girls. We provided the hygienic materials and also acquire some sport equipments for them to do extracurriculum programs, because we thought that the environment was not very appealing for them. And also the fact that they didn't have WCs, for example, separated for girls and boys, it was also a very big constraint. So we had to build it, and we managed to do this. And apart from this, we also hold a large number of lectures related to gender equity, equality, sexual health, and also how to manage and conserve the use of water, because we felt that this was also a problem in the community. We also had an interesting activity because we had to develop some small flyers in local language with messages on the women's rights and positive message in terms of what are the advantages of giving both men and women the same opportunities. In this school in particular, in total, we managed to guarantee that 17 from the 20 girls that we were working with remained in school and managed to complete the school. So for us, it was very positive activity. And also the community now is aware of the advantages of having equal opportunities for boys and girls, and also the existence of a school that now is it has a very secure environment for girls. For us, we feel that it was very positive.
Great.
One of the big challenges that we have is that the culture and language barriers are very strong in the community. So in some cases, we have to address these issues in local language, and in some aspects, some of the topics related to gender and equity, we don't have a very direct translation. So we have to use videos and also some images to explain then what does it mean to give equal opportunities for both men and women. And also we have problems when we are not able to give scholarships for girls. The parents feel that it's not important because they are not going to spend money training girls, because they think that girls should marry rather than studying. Uh, in terms of lesson learned, we think that it's very important to train people on how to do interventions and awareness, having awareness techniques in the communities in particular. There is a need to intensify the campaigns in terms of how to promote gender equality, because within these communities it's still considered a taboo to talk about equality between women and men. And also it's important to also help to create an environment that is safe so that we can inspire parents to allow their daughters to continue with the studies. And it's very important, although it's difficult, it's like two different things, but it's very important to respect the cultural diversity because the problem of promoting equity and equality, it touches very much with cultural aspects. So we managed to teach to train the teachers in using different methodologies in how to address girls and boys in the class. Now we are training and we also monitoring girls to ensure that they don't drop up. We do a lot of trainings. We are also continuing with the awareness campaigns. And one of the good things with this project is that because we managed to organize the school in terms of infrastructure, now the community has benefited from electric lighting, and the government is studying the possibility of introducing evening course for adult literacy for men and women. And this was like something that we advised that there is a need to do it, because these awareness campaigns are not feasible if these people don't understand exactly what we want to address. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elisa, for this excellent presentation of the realities in Mozambique, particularly on secondary education, which are challenging, as we all know. And it's great how you indeed, and this was also mentioned in the chat, highlighted the strong link to communities and cultural beliefs, how important it is to really work on these fundamental changes on how we look at specific groups that are more prone to risk of exclusion, such as girls or children or adults with living with disabilities. Yes, I think there were already quite some takeaways and discussions in the chat going on. And I wanted to actually ask you this question: what are your key takeaways from this session? So we have 4 minutes left. Maybe we use 2 minutes of 1 or 2 people to share their main takeaways. Does anybody want to take the floor? We had active participation in the chat, where already some people were talking about their takeaways around the connections between socioeconomic status as an important factor of exclusion.
If I may, I'd like to invite Jan Steverink. If he's still around, he made a very interesting comment on the group around efficiency versus inclusion. And so I'm keen to hear more about that statement. Jan, are you willing to share?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Well, what I have seen in recent years in the Netherlands is that first there was a tendency, a movement of more inclusion. So children in schools with special needs were stimulated, parents were stimulated to send their children to, let's say, ordinary schools. And nowadays we see a tendency, and especially more or less complaints from teachers from schools, that it's quite difficult to organize, to keep the groups together, to address the children at their own level and according to their own needs. And nowadays we hear more discussion that would it not be more effective, more efficient if we had these children in special education again. So there's this movement, this up and down discussion. And I think it is indeed, it's a dilemma between efficiency and inclusion. I was quite happy with the words of Manos saying that, and the title of his presentation, one of the first slides was "Learner diversity is a strength to be celebrated." And then I was thinking, should we look at the efficiency of education as an institution in a country, or should we look at the benefits for the individual learners? On the other hand, well, it's really a big dilemma. I can imagine if you have a very simple example, blind children. If you have a blind child in your classroom, it's quite difficult for teachers, for other children to participate, to integrate, etc., etc. Would it not be more efficient if 20 schools had one blind child, that the 20 blind children would be in one school and would be educated, would be taught by specialized teachers? So it is a big dilemma. And I can understand from the social point of view that you say, well, there should be more inclusion, and blind children should also be able to integrate with children that can see. On the other hand, even for the blind people, for the blind children, it could be more comfortable and more, they could feel more comfortable when they are with blind children in the classroom. But it's very complicated. That's what my point was.
Thank you, Jan, for sharing. Indeed, I think also Manus referred to this, that this has been a long debate and that indeed it's a process. I do think, though, that the comments that Pam and Antoinette made on this, that some of actually, including more perspectives of diversity in curricula actually strengthen the overall quality of the teaching of the schools. So it is not only a trade-off, it can actually be a gain and make education of higher quality.
And I appreciate that very much, that insight. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your active participation today. For me, this was also a super interesting and inspiring session. And I think summarizing some of the main takeaways, but we're already 1 minute overdue, so I do that quickly. I think this integrated approach that you all so much supported around inclusion, it's not about only this group or that group, it's the interaction between those groups, and also the interaction in the strategies that actually need to be implemented. 10 recommendations from the JAM report that all connect to each other, which you confirmed during the chat too. But one of the main things I think for me, this takeaway is, please let us involve the people that are at risk of exclusion, whether it's girls, whether it's people from ethnic minorities, whether it is people living with a disability, in the design of our interventions. Let's not design for them or talk about them, but actually with them. So I think that's a key takeaway also for us all working on OKP programs to keep that in mind. Thank you so much for this session. It was recorded, so I trust it can be viewed back. Presentations will be shared. And again, we thank you so much for joining. Do watch the news on the other sessions of the partner days. There's still some interesting sessions to come. You can all find them at the NAFIC site. And for now, I wish you a lovely day. Thank you so much.